Okay, so this is video number 2. Again, the goal is that we're basically drawing some pictures or photos or images that we're going to use in our step-by-step instructions in our field guide. So we're trying to draw something that looks like this. Our goal in this video is actually we want to draw a window, and we want to show somebody caulking the gap around the window and air sealing that. So in our first video we drew this building assembly using SketchUp, and in this video we're going to put a window in here, and then we're going to work on drawing the caulking gun and putting a hand on it. So it looks like somebody's kind of putting caulk in there, and then hopefully we'll draw a little bit of caulk in here and get it set up to take a picture or a shot for our field guide. Okay, so in SketchUp, one of the things that I end up using a lot is this right here. It's called the 3D warehouse. And what it is if you draw a component or a picture of something, you can actually upload it to the 3D warehouse and share it with all of the other SketchUp users. And so oftentimes some of the things that you might need will have already been drawn and submitted to this 3D warehouse. So in order to download stuff, you will have to create an account. You'll have to log in to that account. I'm already logged in here. And once you're logged in, you can just start searching for stuff. So I'm just going to search for Windows and hit enter. And let's see what comes up. So we're just looking for a basement window. It'd be nice if it had some sort of a fin on the front of it to kind of bump up against that foundation that we already drew. Let's take a closer look at this one. Now in some of these sometimes they have a thing where you can preview them, sometimes they don't. This one might work. It looks like a vinyl slider. I'm going to try it out. Let's download it. And it says, do you want to load it directly into your SketchUp model? I always say yes. And this will take just a minute depending on the size of it. And then as you can see, it's just going to let me drop it right into my SketchUp model. Now I'm going to just set it right over here to the side. It's kind of bumped up against the foundation. And I want to just move it just a little ways away, and see how I've got that red inference line saying that I'm on the red axis. I just kind of moved it there so that it's not way off in the distance. It's sitting right next to my foundation, but I want to orbit around it and just take a look at this window, see if it's going to work for us. The other thing I want to make note of when I'm uploading or importing some of these images or components is I want to see what kind of stuff I imported. Sometimes the artists or the people that drew these have drawn them on like 15 different layers, and they never group them all together and put them back onto one layer. So sometimes you'll be developing this nicely drawn picture or assembly with your layers all well organized, and then you'll import something and it will bring in like 15 new layers, and it'll kind of mess up everything you were doing. It looks like this one is all assigned to layer 0, so that much is nice. That way it's not spread out across a bunch of layers. It's not going to be too messy. But I just want to kind of orbit around it, and I want to kind of zoom in on it and look at what we've imported here. I might even deselect it so I can get a better idea. I'm wanting to see if it has any type of a fin or anything on it. This one doesn't look like it does. It looks like it's just something that would kind of be plugged into a wall. Really doesn't have a lot of extra detail to it. And since we want something that has some of that detail on it, so we can kind of show that detail in our image, I may not want to use this one. let's go looking for something else real quick. So click back on the 3D warehouse, and we'll do another search for windows or double windows. And just kind of scrolling down. Now with all of these, you can resize them. You can kind of stretch them or flip them if you need to. Even though this one looks like it's a double hung or a single hung, it could possibly work if we spun it on its side. I might come back to that one in a minute. Also, from time to time, you'll find where someone will have drawn kind of a whole package of windows, and like these, and you can import all of them, but then you end up deleting a bunch to get down to just the one that you want. And if you can't find what you want, you can just delete everything and just draw one, but it kind of depends on how detailed you want things to be. Let me take a closer look at this one. This one looks like it's got the same thing going on. It doesn't really have a fin on it. Let's take a look at this one. I'm going to download this one. Let's try it out. Now, this one too also does not have a fin on it, but let's see if we can draw a fin on it real quick. So I'm going to drop it in here, and it is also assigned to layer 0, so that much is good. I'm going to slide it away from the wall a little bit so I can work on it. I'm going to go and select the other window, and I'm going to delete it. And then this window, let's move it to a layer of its own. So window is our new layer, and we'll change it from layer 0 to window. And then let's get in and edit it. Now in this case, it says instead of editing the group, it says edit component, and we'll talk about that later maybe, but basically you can make things into a group and you can make things into a component. I guess the thing I would talk about is, we'll just do it now, is just that if you want a component that, like, you're going to make multiple copies of it, and then if you decide to change the color of one of them, or you decide to resize one of them, it will resize all of them. So these floor joists would have been a great thing to make a component, because then if I stretched this one out and made it 2 feet longer, it would automatically make all of the others 2 feet longer. Or if I decided to change the color, then it would change the color of all of them. So bear that in mind as you're drawing stuff. Instead of making it a group, you have the option to make it a component. You can see that this was made into a component, and it's saying edit component instead of edit group, which is what we're going to do. And we're going to go in, we're going to delete out the dimensions because we don't need them. And let's zoom around here. We might make our own little fin. So, well, first off, let's stretch it to the right size. So while I'm in this edit mode, we have an opening that is, this was 4 feet by 3 feet, but then we took an inch off of each side. So we want our window to be basically about 4 feet minus 2 inches, one from each side. So instead of 48 inches, we want it to be about 46. Let's make it 45.5 inches. That way it'll fit into that space. And then I'm just using my tape measure, and I'm giving me some reference marks, and we're just going to stretch this window to make it fit in a second. So then I'm going to pull off the top, and I'm going to go down. And again, it was 36 inches, but we took off an inch off the top, inch off the bottom, so now we're down to 34. And then we want to give ourselves a little bit of wiggle room. So let's go 33.5. And to stretch this window, we can actually use this tool right here. It's called Scale. And I think I'm going to have to back out of it. So right now it's wanting to know like which individual piece of this whole component am I going to stretch? And that's not what I'm trying to do. What I'm wanting to do is I'm actually wanting to stretch the whole component. So I'm going to click on it. So I kind of clicked out of it back to where I could select the whole component, and then I'm going to select scale, and now you'll see these little handles show up, and you can stretch these in all those different directions. But what I want to do, I don't want to pull it one way or the other. Like if I do this, it makes things all wrong. That's not what I'm after. Like there's a time and a place for that. This ain't it. What I want to do is I just want to push this side that direction over to this line. So to do that, I want to grab that middle handle, and all it's going to do is it's just going to let me stretch this part down. Now you can see that I've made a mistake already in that I drew my reference line inside that component. So I'm going to hit Control, I'm going to let go and hit Control Z to have it go back to the size that I want. And I'm going to hit Control Z again. This is just undo. I'm going to hit undo a couple times to get rid of those lines. And I'm going to let's come outside of it. So this is what I should have done. I thought I needed to draw them inside that component, but I'm going to draw it outside the component. So again, I'm going to come over here, and it was 45.5, and I'm pulling down from the top. And when you pull down, make sure that you're on the plane that you want to be on. I don't know if you saw how that jumped to a different plane and would really mess things up. I want it to be right parallel with the surface of the window. So I'm pulling down there, and we were going to go 33.5. Okay, and then let's try this again. Select the window, select the scale tool, grab this handle, and I'm going to slide it in, and it will snap to that line. And then I'm going to orbit down to the bottom of this window and hit the scale button, and I'm going to grab that center handle, and I'm going to push up and snap to that line. Now this window is 33.5 by 45.5. I'll delete our reference lines, and let's give ourselves a fin on this window. So to do this might take just a minute. It's kind of an interesting thing to do, but I'm going to kind of make everything else disappear. Oh, we did get Esquadarius, which I'm not sure what that is. Let's take a look. It might be. There was something we imported on a layer, on that layer, and since it's not anything that we need, let's make our window appear, and let's just toggle that on and off so it's not messing with anything on our window. I'm gonna select this layer. I'm gonna make it active. I'm gonna go up here, and I'm gonna delete that layer by clicking the minus. And I don't want to move the contents of the layer. I actually just want to delete whatever was on that layer plus the layer itself. So I'm going to delete it. So that's what you do if you get extra layers in and you don't want them. If there's something on that layer, like if there was a part of the window that we wanted, then I would have just actually told it to move it to the window layer. So anyway, so we're going to work on the window for a minute. So I've made everything else disappear, and then I'm going to zoom in on the window, and what I want to do is I want to build a fin onto the window. So we want to get inside the component and edit the component, and we want to basically draw a line right around the middle of this window. So I'm just going to go right off the midpoint and draw a line from there to there, and my pencil's dragging from that corner. I guess I can rotate down there and show you. So whenever you get into the orbit tool, if you want to go backward to the tool that you just had, so I started drawing a line, I drew one down to this corner, and then I went and selected orbit. Now I want to go back to my pencil. That pencil's still active. If I just hit escape, then it'll take me right back to my pencil. So I'll draw my line to there. Now I'm going to go up here and grab maybe the pan tool and pan down zoom in a little bit, then I'll hit escape to go back to the pencil and keep doing the pencil drawing. Then I might go to orbit and orbit up here and then hit escape and back to my pencil, and then I finished that line. Now you'll notice that it did something that might mess things up. It filled in that square, which we don't really want. So we might have to try a different approach on this. Let's see if we can select that surface. Hopefully that's that whole surface that we just drew, and delete it. Let's see if that worked. Oh, that worked. That allowed us to delete that without messing up the window. We can still see through the glass. Okay, so that didn't mess us up too bad. So we'll go with what we've got here. Okay, so we've drawn a line around here, and we're actually going to use that line in a minute. We're going to use this tool right here. It's called Follow Me, and basically we're going to draw like a little teeny box, which will ultimately be our fin, and then we're going to use our push-pull tool, but not the push-pull tool. We're going to use this Follow Me. It works just like the push-pull tool, but it will let us go in different directions. So we're going to draw a little box, and then we're going to follow the line that we just drew all the way around the window to make a fin, and it'll go fairly quickly instead of having to do a bunch of elaborate things to draw a fin. So I've got that line. Now I'm going to zoom in here, and what I want to do, let me pan over a little bit and zoom in where I want to. Maybe orbit a little bit. I'm just going to take my square tool, and I want to fin. So our concrete edge is, we had that 1-inch lip that we made, and we kind of gave ourselves a 1/2 inch all the way around, an extra 1/2 inch. So we got kind of a 1/4 inch to work with, but basically, how tall do we want our fin to be? Probably only 1 inch. If we make it any bigger than that, then it wouldn't really fit in our opening. So we're gonna make this 1 inch tall. So we're gonna draw a box that's 1 inch tall, and then also we want it to have some thickness to it. So let's see if we can get this to figure out what we're trying to do as I'm pulling it up. There we go. If you use your arrow keys, I was actually just clicking my arrows trying to get it to go the direction I want it to go. If you use your arrow keys, you can tell it or force it or constrain it in the direction you want it to go. So basically that's what I want. I want a box that's on that plane that you can see there. And I'm going to let go, and then I'm going to resize that box. So it looks like I drew a box that was 5/16 inch wide and 1 1/16 inch tall. I'm going to change that to, let's go maybe 1/8, comma, and then 1. So 1/8 of an inch by 1. And that's all that's going to be. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come around to this side. Now this gets a little bit difficult when you're trying to pull something very small around a very large perimeter, but we'll give it a try, see how it works. So now that I'm over here, I need to select the surface of that, and then I'm going to pull it along this line. So I'm going to select this tool, Follow Me, and I'm going to hover over, and just like when you're doing a push-pull, it will kind of show that you're on that surface. So I'm going to drag and hold, or click and hold. So I'm going to click, and then I'm going to start dragging my mouse down that line. And if you'll just drag it off to the side, it'll kind of let you follow that line. Sometimes you can even scroll out using your mouse wheel while you're still holding down on things. The only problem is you almost have to move your mouse around and then zoom out. But anyway, you can see that I'm still holding down and I'm dragging. Now I'm going to start going down this edge, and see how it made that corner nice and quick for me. Then I'm going to go down there, and then I'm going to, although you can't see it, I'm going to see if it will follow me around the bottom of that. And then I'm going to see if it'll fall. Nope, it's not going to do that without me orbiting. Let's see if I can zoom out, and then maybe zoom in where I want to. Now, I'm going to go right back to here and let go. Maybe we'll have to orbit around and grab this at a different angle and keep doing it. So I'll go from the bottom here, and let's get back up there and grab that. Now, I didn't want to stop at this corner because I want it to wrap around the corner. That's why I backed off a little bit. But I'm going to go ahead and select that tool again, and then it's kind of hard to see, but I'm going to move my mouse until I have that surface that I want activated, and I'm going to click and drag. And I must not have dragged the right thing, so I'll hit Control Z, and I'll maybe zoom in and try again. So click, and here we go. We're dragging down that red line, and we were able to make the bend. I'm going to zoom out using my mouse here, see if it will kind of move where I want it to. And I'm going to back off again and come to right there, and then I will orbit around here, and our goal now is to make this bend and get back up to the top. So again, I'm going to zoom in, select that surface that I want, and start dragging and head up that way. And finish it off. And then if you want to come in and clean it up a little bit, since we started and stopped a few times, it made a few extra lines that we might need to go in and just delete. So I'm just going to kind of clean that up really quickly. Hit Escape to go back to my eraser. Get onto the other side of that and delete that line. Orbit back this way. I think we had some lines down on the bottom corner where we made that transition. So escape to my eraser, orbit, escape, erase, orbit, pan, escape, erase, and escape, erase, zoom in, erase, orbit, and looks like we're done. Now it also looks like, as I'm looking at this window, it looks like at some point we drew another box, which is basically that band we drew around there, and we have some glass drawn in here, but we drew this new box, and that box is making it so we can't see through our window. So again, I'm going to try and just select that surface and delete it. And again, we lucked out. It looks like it didn't merge with any other layers. It didn't mess anything up. The only other thing we need to do now is, it looks like the surface of this new thing we drew is not the same color as our white vinyl window. So I might go change the color of it. So I'm going to click on Colors on my Materials panel. And I'm going to scroll down to the bottom where my white is. And I'm just going to paint stuff white. Now, since I'm editing this component, that only painted that one surface white. And I really have the front and the back. I also have all of these edges. And if you really wanted to, you could go through and paint them all white. I'm not going to bother painting the other two because they won't show up in our picture, and I don't really care. Anyway, so now we have a window that we pulled in through the 3D warehouse, and we added our own little fin to it. Now we could stick it into our foundation. And then there should be a little bit of a gap around it so that we can kind of illustrate where we would put some caulking. So let's click on this, make sure so it is on the window layer. That's where we want it. So let's make our foundation reappear. Or not our footing, our foundation. Oh, there we go. Okay, we just want the foundation here, and we're just going to move this over there. Now, one of the things that's kind of hard to do is, when you're moving this stuff, is I'd like to move this, but I would like to get this fin flush against that concrete lip that we created. And I would also like it to have that, we know we're going to have about a 1/4 inch gap around it. So if I just grab this with the move tool, then it will snap to these corners, and I might be able to get that corner to snap with another corner, but then I need it to move a little bit once I'm done. But let's try it. So if I want this corner right here to touch one of the corners on our concrete. So I'm going to select this, and then using the move tool, I'm selecting this window, and then I'm going to select, if you look down at the bottom down here, it says, look right down here when I'm hovering, it'll say pick 2 points to move. So I'm going to click this point because that's the point I want to start the move from. And then I'm going to get over here, and I need to somehow, I'm going to change to orbit. I'm going to orbit around, and my goal is to actually touch. I want that point that I selected to touch this point right here. So I'm going to zoom in on this point. I'm going to hit escape to get back to my my window moving stuff. And then I'm going to try and get it to snap to that point. The only problem is it doesn't want to do that. And it's because it doesn't know where I'm inferring, and it can't figure out what I'm trying to do because there's these surfaces that are kind of in the way. So one thing that I have done in the past that sometimes works is I'm going to change the way I'm viewing this. And I'm going to scroll around here, and I'm going to change the way I'm viewing my surfaces. So go up to View, and I'm going to go to Face Style, and I'm going to X-ray. And now I can view this kind of with X-ray vision, and then I'm going to hit Escape. And now hopefully you can see now I kind of want to get to this point right there, and I want to snap this to that. Let's see if it'll do it, or if it will at least let me get real close. I'm not sure why it's not snapping to it, but using the X-ray vision there, I can drop that window right where I need it. Now I'm going to go back to View, and I'm going to change the face style. I'm just going to turn off X-ray, and it didn't snap to where I want it to. So I know that it didn't go exactly where I wanted it to go, and I can kind of see it's not quite there. I'm just going to hit undo. Let's try that again. I'm not sure why it's not snapping. So, well, let's try it. So I'm going to select my component that I'm going to move. Whoops. Select, and then I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to use my move tool, and I'm going to select that point right there, and then I'm going to zoom right back over here, and again I want it to snap to that point, but it's not doing that. Okay, I hit pause and tried to figure out what's going on. It may have been because it's a component. So what I did was I selected the whole thing, and I hit edit, I right clicked, and where it used to say edit component, I hit explode. So I exploded it, which broke it apart from being a component. Then I selected everything, and I made it, instead of making a component, I made it into a group. Now we're going to try to move it. It's still not snapping exactly where I want it to, but let's go ahead and we'll move it in a few moves. Sometimes it just does weird stuff, and you kind of have to use a little logic to get things to move around the way you want it to. Maybe let's try this. Let's swing around to the back side of it this time, and let's go ahead and try and move it off of this corner. So if we move this corner into our basement window, and we got to orbit around a little bit, And so if we were going to move that corner, then we'd want that corner to basically line up with this corner down here. So let's see if we can get it to, okay, so it is actually snapping in there, but you'll notice that this, it put that outer surface, which is our vinyl surface, right on the same plane as the concrete. And really, we want to move our window into the house 1/8 of an inch. So now that we've set it down there, now we can just grab a corner and we can just move it. We can nudge it basically. So I'm going to use the move tool still, and I'm going to grab this corner and I'm going to move it right along this line, and it doesn't matter how far I move it. I could maybe snap it clear to there, but then I'm going to go 1/8, 1/8, and hit enter. And so we just moved it into the house 1/8 of an inch. Now we should have a gap over on the other edges of like 1/2 inch. And that's not what we wanted, right? We wanted this kind of 1/4 inch all the way around. So let's move this up and over 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to use the move tool. I'm going to select this bottom corner, and I'm just going to go right up this edge on the blue axis, and I'm going to go 0.25 and hit enter. And then I want to move it that way, so I'm going to move tool, and I'm going to go right on the red axis. And since the last thing was 1/4 of an inch, sometimes it thinks ahead and it goes, wait, are you wanting to do the same thing? Are you wanting to move this 1/4 of an inch? So I moved it and clicked 1/4 of an inch, and yes. So that one worked. Now we have our window and we have it put right where we want it. Let's zoom around the outside and make sure it looks normal. Okay, so that's really what we would want there, right? Want a window in our foundation. That's looking good. Now we've been actively drawing on the window layer. Oh, I switched that when I had hit pause, I think, so that I could explode it and make sure I was drawing on the window layer. I'm going to go back to layer 0. And I'm going to turn on some of the other layers. Let's just kind of take a look at what we've got so far. So we've got our basement window. Now, the measure that we're trying to do or draw, let me pull that up if I can. Maybe it was right here. Let's see. Our goal was this. We want a picture of someone caulking a gap around a window in a masonry foundation. And I probably want to take this picture from the inside of the house. You may caulk it from the outside. I think it's going to be more common that we'd be caulking it from the inside. It may not necessarily be this type of a fin, but even if there were other types of fin, arrangements, I think this will still get the point across. I don't think it's that important. But if there is something you guys see on a more common basis, make sure you're drawing what you're seeing in the field so that it's a representation of what you see most of the time. But basically, I'm just kind of looking back here going, okay, what's the goal? The goal is to get a picture of someone caulking a gap around a window in the masonry foundation. So what I want to do is I want to probably zoom in here. I want my picture to show that there's floor joists above, that this is a window in a masonry foundation, and maybe I'll pan down a little bit here. And then I'm going to want to show somebody caulking this gap around here. So somehow we got to get a caulking gun into our drawing, and then possibly, if we want, we want to put a hand or something on that caulking gun. So let's try. I'm going to go and take a picture with my cell phone of me holding a caulking gun in my hand. And then we're going to draw that picture and we'll put it in here kind of on a two-dimensional layer, and we'll see if that looks normal. So I'm going to hit pause, I'm going to go take a photo, and I'll be back. Okay, so I went and grabbed a caulking gun, and I just took a photo of it with my hand in the picture. And I'm kind of liking these photos with the hand in the picture. It just kind of shows a little more action than if we just had a caulking gun floating around. So So let's try and use this photo of the caulking gun, and we're gonna basically, our goal is to kind of draw a cartoon version of this, and then we'll put it right over here in the photo so that it looks like somebody's caulking that window. So to do that, I guess first let's go back to our basement assembly and let's save it in case my computer crashes, because I'm going to open up another computer or another program, and I've got multiple programs running that are all taking lots of operating memory or whatever. Anyway, so I'm opening up a program called Inkscape. This is a free open source program. Just do a search for it on the internet. You can download it for whatever your current operating system is. This is a program that's very, very similar to Adobe Illustrator, but it's free. If you have Adobe Illustrator works a lot the same way. You can do all the same things in it. There's millions of YouTube videos on how to run it, so go find some and you'll be able to accomplish the same thing. So what I'm going to do is I want to bring a copy of that photo into this Inkscape. So first off, I'm going to save. Basically Inkscape is open up, and I'm going to just save save this as something, so I'll be able to find it. I've got a folder here in field guides, and this is going to be a caulking gun when I'm all done. So I've got it saved. One of the problems with Inkscape is that it does not automatically save itself. So from time to time, you got to remember to save. Maybe a newer version might save. I lost about 3 hours worth of work last week because of this issue. So make sure you save it from time to time. So we're going to drag in or import a copy of our photo. I just am dragging and dropping it in, and it's basically saying, okay, you've got a JPEG and you're going to import it. How do you want to do it? I think all of the standard fittings or settings work, and I'm just going to hit OK. Now you'll notice that we had that little square here, and then it basically dropped in something ginormous. So just the same as in SketchUp, I'm using the wheel on my mouse to scroll, but if you use the scroll, it goes up and down. If you'll hold the control button though, while you're scrolling, it'll go in and out. And you can see that it brought my picture in sideways. If you just here in the body of it, click again, you see how these handles go from, if I click, the handles go from where I can grab them and basically resize the photo to something where I can twist the photo. So first I'm going to resize it, and while I'm resizing it, I'm going to hold down the Control and the Shift key, and what that'll do is it will resize it, but it won't let me stretch it or mess it up by skewing it. So I'm going to resize it to where, and I'm going to let go. So I clicked and resized it while I was hitting Shift and Control. And then I'm going to hold Control down, I'm going to zoom in, and this box represents just like an 8.5 sheet of paper. So I'm just trying to resize it to where it's something normal sized. And then I want to twist it, and so I'm going to click inside the body of here to change the handles to where I can turn them, and then I'm going to grab that handle, I'm going to start turning, but I want it to lock at 0 degrees. So I'm going to hold the Control button down, and now it kind of locks every 15 degrees. And so I get it to right there, and I'll let go. And then I'm just going to grab it and move it into the middle of my page. So what we're going to do is we're going to trace over this picture. And in order to do that, the first thing we want to do is we want to lock it. So first off, I'm going to zoom in a little bit on the picture now that we got it right in the middle of our page. And I'm just going to select it by clicking, doing a left click. And this program also has layers. And so what I want to do is I want to put it on a layer, and I want to lock that layer. So I'm just going to add a layer here. So this has layer 1, and I'm just going to hit the click add new layer, and it says layer name layer 2. Well, I'm just going to put photo, and I'm going to click add, and what it did is it added this photo. And then I'm going to click on the photo, and I'm going to right click, and I'm going to go down to move to layer, and right now it's on layer 1. I'm going to click on move to layer photo, and then I'm going to go up and I'm going to lock that photo layer. So now if I try to select it, nothing happens. It's locked. That way I can draw over the top of it without clicking on it and moving it or messing it up. Now I want to go back to layer 1 and draw on layer 1, but the way that they have the layers laid out here, that's actually like, if you could imagine actual layers. And since this layer is on the bottom, if I start drawing something, let's say I draw a box here, you'll notice that that box goes below the photo because this layer is literally below this layer. And if I want to move it up, I'm just going to, since I have layer 1 selected, I'm just going to click on that up arrow, and now it moved that layer up above the photo. And so now basically I want to draw on layer 1, and I want layer 1 to be above the photo. So I just wanted to get set up that way. So I'm going to delete it. Again, I'm drawing on layer 1. I have the photo layer locked, and we'll begin our drawing. Now we're just simply going to draw a two-dimensional drawing, and it needs to look exactly like this. Like we're not gonna draw any weird stuff that, well, I don't know how to explain that. Basically, I did a drawing the other day where I drew just the caulking tube, and then I started drawing the caulking gun, and I realized because of layering that the caulking gun wouldn't hide all of the parts of the caulking gun, but then show like this back corner and stuff. So when we draw this, we're literally going to draw it in 2 dimensions, and we'll draw each piece so that when we're done, we'll just have a 2-dimensional picture that we will import into SketchUp, and we will continue to use it as a 2-dimensional picture. So to draw this, we're going to keep it pretty simple. We're not going to do any like lighting or shading or anything. We're just going to draw it kind of cartoony. So let's start with something pretty simple. I'm going to zoom back here, and from out here, all that is just a little black blob. So we're just going to draw that. To draw that, what we're going to do is we're going to use this pen tool right here. And it lets you draw Bezier curves and straight lines. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here, and I'm just going to start clicking on points on this shape, and I'm going to trace that shape. And I basically have to trace like a complete polygon, and I have to close it. So I'm going to start here, I'm going to go around in a circle, and I'm going to come back and close it. So I'm going to click here, and then I have to think about how this shape is going to work out. I'm going to be able to curve every one of these lines. So I'll be able to make that whole curve. So I'll just go to right here, and then there is kind of a square edge there and a corner, so I'll go to that corner, and I'll go to maybe that corner, and then I'll just close that. And I think that should give me the shape that I want. Now what it's done, it's drawn a polygon, and it also has probably filled in the polygon. And over in this panel, you will have to open up some different windows over here in this side panel. I have my layers window open, and you can expand them and collapse them if you want. I think up in one of these drop down windows you'll find the different panels that you can open up. It's been a while since I went looking for them, but you may have to click around to figure out how to open up the right panels. But I have a panel open up for layers, and I also have this export panel, which I use a lot. And then this fill and stroke panel is one that I use a lot. So, and this is the one I want to look at. So this is telling us that we have a fill stroke, which is set to, I think to that, is it? Oh, oh, it actually had nothing. So we're going to click back to that. So we're going to fill it with nothing. But because, in fact, I'm going to move this just so you can see. Because there's dark stuff behind it, it was filling it in. So I moved it. I'm going to hit Control Z to move it back because I want it right on top of there. So that's the fill. That's whatever's going on inside, and we have selected nothing. But then we also have the stroke. The stroke is the line around there. And on the stroke, I'm going to just scroll down here a little bit. There's the stroke paint, and you can get it. You can make it transparent. You can do all kinds of stuff. But the stroke style is the width and whether or not it's going to be like a solid line or not. You see that I have selected a solid line here, and my width is kind of wide for, we are zoomed in quite a bit, but it is still kind of wide. So I'm going to make my width a little smaller, and then I'm going to go down and I'm going to change the color of the stroke. I'm going to click on this red. Now the red did the fill, and I don't want it to do that, so I'm going to go back over here and change that to nothing. And I'm going to go back over to the red, but this time I'm going to hit Shift, and now when I hit Shift and select a color, it will change the stroke. And so as you can see down in the bottom left, fill is at none, the stroke is at red, and then it tells me the size of the stroke is 0.05 in pixels. And we'll probably leave it like that. Now the next thing we're going to do is we want to edit the path by nodes. So we basically want to make it have a bunch of nodes. And you can either click up here or you can learn the shortcut, and the shortcut to this one is F2. So if I have something selected and I hit F2, it's going to put a little node on the end of every one of those lines. And then I want to select all, and I can't remember what select all was. I think it might have been Control A or Shift A. Let's see, select all, Control A. Yeah, so once you've got all the nodes activated, then we want to hit Control A and maybe nodes. Basically, I want to select all these nodes. Normally by hitting Control A will highlight them. Maybe it did. And then we're going to switch these nodes into, we want to basically put some handles on them so we can move them around or curve them. And so one of the things, there's this toolbar up here where you can get rid of some of the nodes if you have too many of them. You can make the selected nodes smooth. You can make them symmetric. You can make them auto smooth, or you can turn them kind of into a corner. I'm going to just click on this and make them smooth, and you'll see it's going to like mess things up. Kind of made the whole thing all wonky. But then what I do is I'll come in here and I'll just select this one node and I'll turn it into a corner. And then what that lets me do is it'll let me take this handle and I can move that handle to where basically this half of the line goes right over what I want it to go over. And then since I turned it into a corner, I'll be able to take this handle and move it up and get this line to start going where I want it to go. Now if I hadn't turned it into a corner, if you'll notice this one up here, this one kind of wraps around a corner, and if I try to grab this handle, look at how it keeps that other handle right in line with it. So I probably need to turn this one into a corner as well. But if I want it to bend around that corner, then I can leave it alone. So let me see if I can get this line to go where I want it to go. I'm going to move it there. I'm going to click on the node itself and maybe move that node just a little bit here. I'm going to shorten my handle and move that so it curves. I'm going to adjust this one so that curves. And I can even shorten this handle a little bit on this other side. And now you'll notice it's going to snap to lock to the nodes from time to time. And if you don't want it to do that, sometimes you can hold the Shift key down and it'll keep it from snapping too fast or snapping where you want it or don't want it. But I'm moving that handle, I'm holding the Shift key down, I'm going to let go. So now I've kind of got, I did not turn that into a corner. I want it to kind of bend around there. but I've got these handles moved, so I've basically been able to trace that shape right there just by tweaking these handles. This one up here, it looks okay. This one, I want like a nice angle there, so I am actually going to turn this one into a corner, and I'm going to bring this handle down, and I might zoom in. I'm going to hit Control and just scroll in there a little bit, and I'm going to tweak these handles down a little bit, because this kind of creates a little bend in the metal. And then this one, I'm just going to leave it alone. It's right about where I want it to be. So I've got that all drawn. Now I want to color it, and I want to color it the same color as my picture. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this little ink dropper, and it says pick colors from image. So if I click on the ink dropper and then I hover over the color that I want it to be and click, it just filled in this whole image with the color that I was touching. To show you that, I'm going to move it to the side, and you can see it just filled the whole thing in with that color I'd touched right there. So I'm going to hit Control Z, and I'm going to grab my ink dropper, and this time I'm going to hit Shift because I want also to make my outline the same color. So I'm going to hold Shift down, and I'm going to click on the color I want my outline to be. And now I have this solid looking piece of something that's the right color. And if I zoom out, you can see in our image that will look like a caulking gun when we're done. So now let's draw, we're going to draw this gray part here, and it'll basically be all of this metal here, and then we may have to break it into some smaller pieces to get it to look right. But let's go ahead and give it a try. So again, we're going to start with our Bezier curve. And I'm probably going to start right up here, and I'm just going to start drawing. I'm going to click here and here. And you don't want to put too many nodes out there. It gets messy. So basically, I should be able to, if I wanted to, I should be able to come and make this whole arc with like 1 or 2 nodes. So I'm going to put one there, and then I'll put one down here somewhere, and maybe I'll put one right back here. And now that I'm looking at this, if I do want to show that there's kind of a dark outline here, I'm going to have to draw that. I'm just going to start by drawing this little piece here. So I've got nodes for that, and then I'm going to come right up here and I'll draw this piece, and then I'm going to put a node right here, and I'll be able to bend that line up there, and then I'll come right over to maybe here. And that looks a little wonky because I really probably should have just drawn my polygon from here to here. Let's just hit Control Undo, and let's try that again. So again, Bezier curve tool. I'll start up here and draw a couple of nodes. Come down to here, maybe one here and there, and I'll close that out. And then I'm gonna drop the width of my line down just a little bit, and if it helps, again, I'll hit Shift and turn my line to red just so I can see it. I'm gonna hit F2 so that it'll change my pathway to nodes, and then I'm going to start selecting which of the nodes. I'm going to hit select that one and hit Shift and select that one, and maybe this one and this one, and I'm going to turn those into auto smooth, or make them smooth. And then I'm going to start stretching stuff around where I want it. And you can see just by moving these handles around, you can get those lines to basically trace what you are trying to draw. And if you need to move a node a little bit, now see, I've got 4 or 5 nodes selected and I'm accidentally moving all of them. I don't want to do that. So I'm going to click out here and then I'll just select that one node. I just want to kind of move it up a little bit. And I'll tweak that a little. And maybe, so see how this arc needs to be a little bit wider. If I stretch this one up a little bit, it'll move that arc around. And then I'm just going to color this piece that I just drew. I'm going to color it in with this gray. And I'll hold the shift key down and color the outside with that gray. And then I need to draw this darker shape piece underneath there to kind of show that. So, so what I'll do is I'm going to go up to my layers. I'm going to add an extra layer, and I'm going to draw this dark piece, and then I'm going to drop it below this light gray so that I don't really have to get this edge the exact same. I really just want to draw this outer edge, and then I'll kind of make it shaped like a moon, and then I'll put it underneath there, and we'll call it good. So I'm going to add a layer, and well, I don't even know if I don't even need to add a layer. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to copy this. So I'm going to hit Control C and Control V. And I'm going to move that right out there. And we're just going to slide that back over in a minute, right where we want it. I'm going to take this piece and I'm going to edit it to be the dark piece. So I'm going to switch back to my node view, and I'm going to change my line back to red. So I'm going to hit Shift and click on red. And then if you'll hover right over this line, not on the nodes, but if I hover on this line, it selected this line segment between these two nodes. And I'm going to go up here, I'm going to hit plus, and I'm going to add a node in the middle of it. And the reason I did that is I want to, whoops, I still have all 3 of those selected, so I'm going to hit Control Z. I want to just move this one node, and I want to move it up to this corner right there. I'm going to turn that node into a corner so that I can squish this back down where I want it. And maybe tweak this a little bit down here. Might even zoom in a little bit to get this to go to the right shape. And, whoops. And then I'm going to kind of tweak this back this way to see where that shadow is, and then see how much I can mimic it. I'm going to move this. So again, I've got 2 things selected. That is one thing I continue to mess up here. I'm making this dark shadow line, so I'm moving this red line over to that dark shadow. That's what I'm tracing this time. So I'm going to kind of tweak that a little bit to match the shadow. And I'll do the same down here. Just select this one node and move that out. Maybe select this node and move it up a little bit. And I might even move this one node over a little bit and up. And then I'm gonna grab this handle on this node and adjust that. And I might cover that up just a little bit there. Now, what I want to do is I want that to be dark, so I'm going to change the color of this whole thing to be dark. And probably I'll just use that same color up there. So I'm going to grab the ink dropper, and I'm going to hover over here, and I'm going to hit Shift and make the line dark. And then I'll let go of Shift and I'll make the inside dark. and then I will zoom out. And my photo image, I think I'm just running out of enough operating memory or whatever to display the photo. So from time to time it's going to kind of blink off and on. And then I'm just going to bring this back in here and lay it right on top of where it was before. And it kind of snapped, this node snapped to the original node or the copy of it. And then I'm going to zoom out and I'm going to see what it looks like. Now on the photo layer, I'm just going to turn that off real quick. So make it go away and make it reappear. And you can see that from a distance, without putting a lot of detail into it, looks just like a caulking gun so far, right? All right. Now at this point, I will probably continue to record very slowly some of this stuff, but you may want to just fast forward through some of this stuff. But I'm going to try and draw this next little piece of metal and maybe a couple of these other pieces, and then I'll hit pause, draw in a bunch of stuff, and then I'll show you how I draw the hand. So anyway, I'll continue on here for a minute. But yeah, the next piece I want to draw is going to be this piece of metal here. So, and I won't worry about that shading yet, but we'll probably draw that shading in, and we'll do the same thing we did here. So again with my Bezier curve. Now if you get to where you're snapping to stuff that you don't want to snap to, you can actually create another layer. In fact, I'm going to do that really quickly. So I'm going to create a new layer, and this will be the caulking gun. And I'm going to put it below my current layer, and I'm going to hit add. So there's the caulking gun, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these pieces, so it's above the photo but it's below the current layer that I'm drawing on, and I'm going to just move them to the caulking gun layer. And then what I'm going to do, and notice as soon as I move that light gray one to the caulking gun layer, that caulking gun layer is below the current layer. And so it dropped it below. But as soon as I move this one also to the caulking gun layer, then it should, well, it may or may not maintain that order. If it gets out of order, you can use the reordering tools, which are here, or I think they also show up in your align and distribute. But I'm just going to drop that layer down below. So there's layers, but there's also just elements on your canvas that may be above or below each other. So I just pushed that dark piece below this light gray piece. But now all three of those pieces that we've drawn are now on the caulking gun layer. I'm going to lock that layer. And if I wanted to just check, I can just toggle on and off and view it. So I'm going to hide it, and sure enough, it's disappearing and reappearing. So that's working well. That's what I want it to do. I'm going to leave it visible. I just wanted to lock it so I don't grab it on accident and mess it up. So, and I also don't want my lines snapping to it. So, okay, so I'm going to draw in this little thing here. So, using my Bezier curve tool, I'll just start tracing. Oh, now if you click and nothing's happening, it's because I don't have a layer activated. So I'm going to click on layer 1. And now I should be able to start drawing again. So click there, and sure enough, it's working. And if you start thinking about, where your nodes will go and how they will bend, you're not necessarily going to drop a node here at the top of the arc. It's actually over here in the middle, so I'll make an arc there and drop a node here. I'll make an arc here and drop another node here, and then to finish this bend out, I might drop a node here, and then I pretty much have a straight line to there. And so kind of just going to go around the image and try and drop nodes in the best place so that I'm not having to move them around a bunch after I'm done drawing. And once you've played with that a little bit, you'll start to learn where to drop your nodes and where to not. And then this one, I'm going to have some sort of an arc coming down to here. Now it is trying to grab one of the handles, or is trying to snap to one of those handles. But again, if I want to hit the shift key and get this a little more precise, sometimes it'll prevent it from snapping to one of those. And then I'm going to click here, and then to get this arc, I'm just going to go all the way over to here, and I'll just bend that whole line later. And then same thing down here. I'm going to come in here and snap about here, but then I'll make my next node clear over there. Snap there and there. And you can get really, really artsy-fartsy. You can put all kinds of reflections and shading on this kind of stuff. But you'll see I'm going to keep this pretty simple, and I'll close our polygon. I'm going to keep it pretty simple and not do any of the reflection stuff, and it will work out just fine. Again, I'm going to hold shift and turn that red, and then zoom out a little bit. And I'm just going to select all the, I'm going to turn everything into a node, and then I'm just going to select all. And I think I want to auto smooth everything first. And then there's a couple of these nodes that I want to turn into corners. So I'll turn those into corners. I'll turn this one into a corner. And the rest of them, I should be able to kind of get them to do what I want it to do. This one, I'm probably going to push further below. I'm going to drop it down below this dark layer, so I'm going to kind of bring that arc around there. But let me just zoom in here and start moving the handles on my nodes to the shape that I want. So this one, I'm going to stretch that arch up there. Now this is going to be a straight line, and if I start stretching this, you can see what it does to the rest of it. I can either shrink that down to where the handle's really, really short, or even lock it to the node, which essentially gets rid of the handle. Sometimes it kind of throws this out of whack and you have to readjust it. But yeah, since this is a straight line, you either need to turn it to a corner or lose the handle in some cases. And I've got the same thing going on over here, where this was kind of a straight line, but then this little extra handle's messing it up. So I'm just going to snap that to the node, and then I'll stretch my arc over there. And that should look a little smoother when we're all done. These ones, you can kind of stretch them to fit. I think this one I made a corner, so I can just stretch that down there. Goodness. Anyway, you're just going to go around this and move things to trace the outline of what you're trying to draw. And again, you know, you can drive yourself crazy on some of this stuff, but a lot of it you can really just get it close, and then when you zoom out you'll see that it really is a great representation of what you're doing without drawing in tons and tons of detail. And you'll see when we're done, this is just going to be a cartoony looking thing, so nobody's going to expect it to be a Van Gogh or anything like that. So I need to, maybe I did, I turned that one into a corner. This node is not quite in the right spot. I'm just going to move it, stretch that. That looks a little more accurate. And I'm going to make that curve there. This one I want to shrink the handle down, and then I'll be able to make this arc. Same deal here, I think. And I think I better turn this into a corner because it's given me some trouble once that handle disappears. And same thing here. I kinda, anyway. You have to click around sometimes and make that stuff work a little bit. And then I'm just gonna turn the whole thing gray. And I probably don't want it light, and I probably don't want this shadow, but maybe just right there. That's probably the color I'm after. And I'll hit the shift key and turn that line gray. And then I'm going to move this whole thing to the caulking gun layer. And I'm going to unlock the caulking gun layer. I want to make a copy, Control C, Control V, and then I'm going to move this back. I probably shouldn't have moved that to the layer, but I'm going to move this to layer 1, and then I'm going to lock the caulking gun. That way this piece is locked, but this piece is not. I'm going to move it right on top. I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to change this to this darker color here. And I'm going to leave the lighter gray just so instead of turning it back to red. But basically I'm going to make that dark edge there. So I'm just going to start moving my nodes and basically moving it up to meet that darker shadow. Hopefully. And this does not have to be super precise. You could even go crazy and blur this a little bit if you wanted to. But for what we're doing, let's move that one out. I must have an extra node there that I don't really want or need or something. Oh, the handles were just overlapping. So, just kind of moving all this stuff to represent that little dark shadow there. And that shadow might be important enough to, make a shadow here in order to give us the right picture that we're after. Maybe I need to move that a little more, capture more of that shadow. And then I'm going to hit shift. I'm going to grab the eyedropper, hit shift, and turn that line dark as well. And then I'm going to move this to the caulking gun layer. I'm going to unlock the caulking gun layer. I'm going to select this and I'm going to move it down. So now it's down below the other thing. And then I'm going to zoom out and we'll lock the caulking thing back up, but let's turn off the photo. And it's starting to look like a caulking gun, right? And you see, we don't have to do a ton of stuff here to get all that shading and stuff. Just simply the couple of these shadows and things will get us there. Alright, I'm going to hit pause because I don't want to make a massive video. I'll build out some of this other stuff, and then when I get to the hand, I'll hit play again.